Welcome to Resilience plus Rise, the podcast where we transform adversities into triumph, illuminate the extraordinary potential within all of us. Yes, I say the word extraordinary because the people that I talk to, they are ordinary people, but they have done some extra element to make them, and we call them extraordinary. I'm your host, Thomas Scaria. I'm a resilience coach. I'm an ultra marathoner and a firm believer in your next most powerful chapter. This podcast is a companion to my upcoming book, Resilience plus Rise 26.2 Transformative Miles to Unleash Your Marathon of Life Mindset, coming up April 2025. Here, we amplify stories of hope, perseverance, and success to inspire your journey. Today, I'm honored to have Zoe Dalton, whose story embodies the very essence of resilience. Zoe is an American Sign Language interpreter, a talent acquisition consultant, an insurance agent. But these titles only scratch the surface of her incredible journey. Get ready to be inspired by Zoe Dalton's incredible story of resilience and the unwavering belief in the power of human spirit. So, here I ask you to just pause. Imagine starting with just $30 to your name. That's all. Facing the daunting task of providing for your sons while navigating the complexities of domestic violence. That was Zoe's reality. But instead of succumbing to despair, she chose relentless action. So let me not take more of your time. Zoe, welcome to Resilience Plus Rise.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Zoe, as we were talking a while back, and we were talking about the different challenges, etc. Just for the audience or the listeners, can you take us through the journey of your life?
Well, it hasn't been an easy one, but I've always been a big believer that without the valleys, you can't enjoy the peaks, and the valleys never last long. So, and I learned that from a very young age, middle school into high school. Was thrown into some, adverse situations with shoulder injuries and competing in swimming, and then went to the college level. I had to take a year off from swimming because I broke my back. So I went from all America status to absolutely nothing. And then having to rebuild from there. And that was my first experience of having to rebuild myself, restart and rebuild. And little did I know I was going to do that several times over in my adult life. But when I moved to New Jersey, I met my now ex-husband, and everything went well in the beginning. And it wasn't long after before, things transpired where he was emotionally abusive. I was very alone in my marriage, and we essentially had separate lives. We ended up having two beautiful children, Wyatt and Levi, and who are now 19 and almost 17. And shortly during my 40th week of pregnancy, my last week of pregnancy with Levi, my younger son, his father, my then husband, became gravely ill. That evening, actually, it was at the end of March, and we're actually coming upon that anniversary pretty soon. He got very sick, and he was flown to the larger regional hospital where he coded for 10 minutes. So he was clinically dead for 10 minutes, not long after I arrived into the hospital to see him and see what was going on. And this was at 5 o'clock in the morning. So He actually, after he was resuscitated, he ended up having open heart surgery. He went into liver and kidney failure. And this was all while I was 40 weeks pregnant with my younger son. So that all transpired between Sunday and Monday. I was due on Friday with Levi. Wednesday, by the time Wednesday hit, my father went into the emergency room himself in the same hospital. So I was 40 weeks pregnant with a 2.5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old toddler, and then my husband was intubated, not expected to live, and then my father was in the emergency room for his sodium levels were off. That night I went into labor, and when I went into labor, the umbilical cord, he was having heart decels because the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. So after he was born, he ended up being fine. And then I was able to, with permission, bring Levi down to see his father because we really thought it was going to be the only time they were going to meet. So when they met, I unswaddled Levi and he started crying because it was cold, and his father opened his eyes and smiled and began the path to recovery. Unfortunately, the emotional abuse escalated after he got home into physical abuse. And he's a former police officer. So it was very hard for me to get the nerve to stand my ground and leave, especially because I had 2 young children. And there were other things that were going on that led up to this too. There were financial concerns. I was working 3 jobs to keep us afloat, and I was taking care of everybody. So it was very challenging. It was very stressful for me, but I kept doing what I was doing, and I did my best to stay faithful to my vows and commitment to him, to take care of him and be with him in good times and in bad. But the minute he laid hands on me, it was game over. And it was very, very difficult for me to request a restraining order because I knew that my son's lives were going to be completely altered. But I also knew that if I didn't save myself, I might not wake up in the morning and my kids would not have a mother at all. So you can hear in my voice, it brings emotion, but it was the greatest thing that I ever did. Because flash forward later on, my sons stood up for themselves to their father, and they had enough, and they came in and moved in with me full time. So I look back, and had I not done that, my sons wouldn't have had the strength and the conviction to say I've had enough. So I'm very grateful for that, and all roads lead to where we are. So after he put his hands on me, I had a restraining order. I ended up filing for divorce. It was past the point of no return and reconciliation. So in the process of the divorce now, mind you, I had Wyatt, who was 4 at the time, pushing 5, and Levi was 3, and 2.5, 3. So in the process of the divorce, he decided he was going to clean out the joint bank account and hand me a bank check for $30.28. And at that time, I was just downsized from a job, and I was sitting there going, what do I do? So I took the check, I went to the bank, and I cashed it because it was all I had. And I didn't want to give him the chance to take any more. So I took that $30.28. I took my son to the grocery store, got enough food for the week for just them, and I went and I found a job. And from there, that was where I built my life because I had no choice. Life is unfair, but it is beautiful because it gives you opportunities when you don't think they're present. So him handing me that bank check for $30.28 was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I wouldn't have what I have now and be who I am and achieved what I have achieved had he not done that. So I'm very grateful to him. I actually at one point thanked him, and he looked at me like I had three heads. But um, after I divorced, I was dragged into three custody cases in 2 years, had to defend my custody. And in that, I learned a lot about myself. I learned how to pick and choose my battles. I learned how to fight fair. I learned how to see more than one perspective. And I fought a lot of parental alienation to the point where my sons would come home and say, Dad tried to make me call you it. So big, it was a situation where I had to do my healing in order to support my sons and their growth and maturity and their need to deal with that form of emotional abuse, and that's emotional abuse by proxy. So in this spiritual journey that I went on, not I was also professionally rebuilding my life. So in rebuilding my life, defending my custody cases successfully, I knew I needed to work on me. Not so that I could just get over it and heal my wounds, but I knew I needed to be healed, or as healed as I could be, for raising my sons, to be fully present for them, because I was on a mission to raise boys to be greater men than their predecessor. That was my responsibility. So in this spiritual journey, I did a lot of meditation, a lot of self-examination, a lot of questioning of who I am, what my behaviors are, what my patterns are, what weren't serving my best and highest self. And that was a question that I always asked myself repeatedly throughout this journey, where I needed to make a decision or something didn't sit right in my gut, my intuition. And I would ask myself, is this what is best for my best and highest self? And if there was a doubt, it was a no. And so part of that was also taking a look at myself and recognizing the patterns I had with men. And this is also on the heels of me during the divorce having to pick myself up by the bootstraps and not committing suicide. It was, he made me feel so worthless that I felt that permanently escaping would bring me more peace. I felt it was going to be my only way out of it. And after several weeks, it was as if I just picked myself up by the collar, by the shirt, and said, no, I can't. No, I will not leave my sons with somebody like this. He does not get to control me anymore. This is my life. Game over. This is mine. And I just took back my life. I went back on social media. I started living my life again. I started finding joy in things. Gratitude was the cornerstone of every day. I woke up and I picked something to be grateful for. Didn't care if it was the ability to bite into an apple because I had teeth, or listening to my children laugh because my parents are deaf and they can't hear that, to, just something that tastes good, a sip of coffee, anything, just finding that gratitude and joy, because anytime things went sideways, it was something I could go back to. So I overcame that by my own sheer will, and because my kids were the reason why I wanted to stay alive. So when it came to needing to rebuild my life to be the provider for my sons, I rebuilt my career, my professional life. And I had the vision of working for the company, the healthcare system that took care of me and both my sons and their father when he was gravely ill. And I wanted to give back. So I set my sights on that job years and years and years ago. So I'm rebuilding myself professionally. I took a look at my personal self and my behaviors and my patterns, and I started to go, hold on a second. And I was cleaning my house one day. My sons were with their father. And I heard a song that I've heard dozens and dozens of times before, but it was one of those songs where all of a sudden, like even though you've heard it, just one line, one or two lines stand out and it reverberates as if you've never heard that line or those lyrics ever before. It's like it was plucked out and planted in your head and you're hit upside the head with a frying pan almost. And I realized why I married my ex-husband. I realized why I was seeking attention and getting into unfulfilling relationships the way I was. And it hit me through these two lines in this song that it's a two-part thing. That one, my mom, when I was 4, left my dad, just right up, walked right out of the, packed a suitcase and walked right out. And my dad took my sister and I, jumped in the car, chased her down, and I watched them communicate in this beautiful part of a town where it's a covered road by trees. And I watched them communicate and work it out from afar. And I was only about 4 at the time. But I didn't know until I heard the lyrics in that song that my mother is the reason why I had the spine to finally stand up for myself, to not be the doormat, and to stand up to my then husband and my abuser that I had had enough. And that rippled down to my children as well. So had it not been for my mom, none of this would have happened. So the other piece of it is the reason why I had those patterns of behavior and that those men was because of my father. And my father and I are still very close to this day. And he never missed a swim meet in 11 years. He was always there for me when I had the restraining order on my ex-husband and I needed to get an attorney. He showed up in 1 hour with a bank check saying, "This is a gift, get a good attorney." So now I know where I get why I'm a provider. It's because of my father that I'm the provider to my sons. I don't get child support. I get nothing. I do it all on my own. But that's from my dad. But also my dad, in 38 years at the time, I'm now 49, in 38 years, I never realized the pattern of behavior was because to that point in my life, my father never said, not even on my wedding day, "You're beautiful" or "You're pretty." And he never said, "I love you." So what I did was I went to my dad and I said, "Dad, I need you to hear me. And I just relayed what I just told you." And when I told him that he not once in my 38 years ever said, "You're beautiful" or that "I love you," his face dropped and I could see the sadness and the horror. And I said, "But Dad, it's okay. I'm not angry with you. I'm grateful because what you didn't say was my brain took it and twisted it up into something that was so far from the truth because you never, ever not made me feel loved. I always felt loved. And even though you didn't say the words, you still loved me. It's just what my brain did and twisted it all up." And as soon as I said that, his face changed. And I said, "And now I know better because I didn't need that validation from you. I had to validate myself. It was me learning to love and respect myself more." And once I did that, that manifested in everything that I did. I started meeting better men. I started being a better mother. I started loving my children in a different way, in the way that they needed to be loved because of who they are. I started to be a better daughter, a better woman, a better employee. My career started improving. I won my last custody case. I manifested it to the point where my profile picture on my Facebook page, which was a picture of a lioness, and she's in the grass prowling and hunting. I manifested so much in my last custody case when I walked in the courtroom doors and I saw what was on the judge's bench. I knew right then and there I was going to win the case, because there was a figurine of a lioness on her side, crouched in that same position. And I was like, I'm winning today. I'm winning today. And I did. So it's, the journey has not been easy. It has been extremely rough. It has been a lot of shadow work, and shadow work is looking at the dark parts of yourself and looking at those wounds, nurturing those wounds, and transmuting them, transforming them into love. And once I was able to do that and go through all that horrible work, it's, you look back and it's some of the most beautiful work that you'll ever do on yourself, and it manifests everywhere in your life, everywhere. I have the job that I once dreamed of. I'm advancing and starting to lead on projects and being creative. I've opened up an LLC, 30.28, in honor of the check that was handed to me. So none of this was ever in vain. You know, has all served me, and now I'm on a mission to help and serve others by what I have been through, because nobody gave me the guidebook. I just was surviving. I was in survival mode. And if I can help somebody transition from survival mode to thriving mode, I've done something good with my life.
Wow, that's quite a bit of story. That is a story. So, guys, whoever's listening, I will be putting out Zoe's contact information in the comments. Do have a look onto it. Do reach out to her, and she has she has seen life. But there was a thought which came to me, is that having the mindset that life is happening for me, not to me, can be a game changer. For so many years, as you mentioned, is that you fell into incorrect relationship, looking out for validation through all the other people, seeking, not getting it from the person that mattered the most, and also coming to a point wherein you were on your knees about whether it is about the $30 check, or whether it was coming to a point wherein you had to fight tooth and nail for your children, or you had come to a point wherein literally you contemplated about committing suicide, and how you pivoted. So that is absolutely an inspiration. So, Zoe, a question that comes up in my mind is that, is if this I mean, as I mentioned, is that this is the power of one. If even one listener gets to this point of listening to this podcast and they have a look onto it, what is the, I don't ask for suggestion, I mean, advice, because advice here is not really, but what is a suggestion that you could give a person who's having maybe a similar type of a challenge, or it could be challenges of their life itself, to a lady who's vulnerable, who feels that the earth has just shaken below her? What would you suggest that she could do?
Oh, persevere. Just persevere. It is something my dad taught me when I was very young, and I was a young competitive swimmer. And it is something that has stuck with me ever since. And even when I mean, I lost battles in court, don't get me wrong. I wasn't a clear winner every time. But even when he hugged me after court, when I lost the battle here and there, he hugged me and he said, persevere, persevere, persevere. And there is nothing that you can't do. If if anybody can take my story and say, if she can do it, I can do it, you can do it. I didn't think that I had every card and chip stacked against me, but it was a matter of perseverance. And when you persevere, you dig deep and you find that drive, especially when you have no other choice. Use that, the no other choice, as the opportunity. It is the only opportunity that you have.
Super, fantastic. And just being mindful of the time. Also, just in continuing of what you were just mentioning, do you have any last thoughts about life itself, or the people who are perseverance, or what you have been your song as be relentless?
Yes. There's very different parts to me. I have a very hard driven lioness mindset, and then I've got, this softer part of me. So what I the two parts are: remember, everybody that you meet is afraid of something, loves something, and has lost something. And that makes every single one of us human, and we all are wired for connection. So you are not alone, never alone. Always ask for help, always reach out, because you never know what somebody's story might do for you. And vice versa. When somebody reaches out to you, take the time, because what you can, just even simply giving that shoulder is sometimes the biggest thing that you can do for them. It could save their life. Now, the other part of me is that, hard, driven woman. And I was told right before I left for college by my neighbor, who was he was also my dentist, but he was drafted by the NFL, the former Washington Redskins at the time. And he said, when you get into the workforce, people are going to tell you that there's a glass ceiling. That's a figment of imagination. There's no glass ceiling. You go as far and as high as you want to go. You make that happen. Don't let anybody tell you you can't do it. And that's what I've done. And that's what I continue to do. So if you have that very human side of you, but also that very driven side of you, that will take you way farther than you think that you can go.
Fantastic. That's just amazing what you have achieved in what life has thrown to you, and what you have made of it. So, guys, what we just heard from Zoe was not just about the battles that she had, but how she persevered. She was relentless, and she reclaimed, overcoming adversity, reclaimed her power. And as what I've been hearing is that building a life of purpose. In her story, we realize the importance of relentless action in achieving your dreams, transforming pain and setbacks to fuel your journey, and the power of believing in yourself, even when the odds are stacked against you. So, here it's all about how you can be more resilient. Resilience is there in everybody, it is just going over and above when universe, life, whatever it is, kicks you where it hurts the most, maybe in a corner or maybe wherever it is. But you have the power to stand up and, as I would talk about Zoe, roar like a lioness. Thank you,
Absolutely.
Zoe. Thank you, Zoe, for your space and time. I would conclude this recording. Just
Thank you. Thank you so much.